Welcome back for another episode of Strive for 25. Joel Farrell here, and looking forward to share with you our guest today. Welcome back for another episode of Strive for 25. Joel Farrell here, and looking forward to today's guest. All right, welcome to another episode with the Strive for 25 podcast. I've got a really cool guest on air with us today, Josh Legare, and he's an entrepreneur, a realtor, previous military experiences. He's a veteran, and just a lot of good stuff to be able to dig into. So, Josh, go ahead and introduce yourself for our listeners today.
Yeah, so I'm Josh Legare, currently in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. Was in the military. Do you want me to go into background or anything?
Yeah, please do.
So grew up in Maryland, military family, joined the military, joined the Army for about 11 years, did the overseas thing for 6 of those 11 years. I was a paratrooper, landed in Fort Walton Beach for my last duty station, and decided to get into real estate. Been in it for about a year now. Started with Airbnbs, got into Turo, started dipping my hands into all these different pots, just to see what stuck. And it's been great so far.
So I know you from my day job side of things with, we run a mortgage branch, and just on the realtor side of things, your name gets thrown around a lot as one of the really good realtors that knows the industry, knows the markets, knows how to work with investors, and knows how to work with a lot of buyers. So I was surprised to hear that you had, started your journey on the Airbnb side initially before you get your license. So, how did that even come about? What was like the first couple of dominoes that got you into that world, and how and why and what?
Yeah, no, Airbnbs was, it's a true passion of mine because it really helped me get out of a lot of debt. I was overseas for about 5 years before I got to Florida, and first thing I wanted, I just knew I didn't have any real estate, and I was like, man, I need to start building some passive income. I started listening to podcasts, and I was like, I know this is something I need to get into, and I have the VA loan. So when I got here, I was like, I bought a 3-bedroom house, 2,000 square feet. And I was like, man, I thought, more people would come by to visit. Like I had these rooms set up, and people are busy. So, it doesn't always happen that way, right? So um, I started Airbnb one of the rooms out. And I was like, holy smokes, I'm making some decent money. And I started paying my mortgage with one Airbnb room in Fort Walton Beach that's like 15 minutes from the water. It's not even on the beach. So it's just one bedroom and I'm living in it. So I started house hacking. And then I was like, holy smokes, let me do the other room. And this was right around February, about 2 years ago. And
So February 2020, right before COVID, or the year after?
oh, sorry, 21. Yeah,
Okay, 21. Oh
yeah,
yeah, okay. So almost 2 years ago. Yeah, okay, yeah.
yeah.
So before you go any further, so
Hmm?
do you want to share kind of price point? Are you on the house?
Yeah. So I mean, for me, initially, like as I was getting more and more Airbnbs, I was doing like pricing analysis, like usually every week on a Sunday, figuring out like, about a month out, like what should my price point be? But this is something that we didn't talk about, Joel, but I actually use a dynamic pricing tool that gains market data from the current area, and they see like, for example, all right, there's 50 private rooms available in Fort Walton with a private bathroom, right? 40 of those are taken, maybe 45. So demand is going to go up, right? Depending, and maybe there's a concert or something. They factor in all that stuff, excuse me, and then they raise the value based on that, and they kind of recommend averages and different things. So it's one of those things that I kind of set and forget now because I spent a lot of time just doing pricing, and I was like, hey, I'd rather leave it to a bunch of guys that are doing that analysis for me, and I only pay
Okay.
about $20 a month for for that tool per listing. So it's really hard to put an exact price on it right
Okay.
now. I mean, we're floating anywhere. And I mean, I have everything from two like private rooms to 5 bedroom homes. And so we're floating right now anywhere from uh about private rooms, $40 a night with cleaning fees, to about 250 a night if you got a waterfront property.
Okay, so this first property started renting out the rooms in 2021,
Hmm.
and how does this even come? So you mentioned podcasts. Like, what was the last straw that said, you know what, like this is something that I'm gonna go just try it and do. Like, what was that time frame of it when you started thinking about it versus like when you actually just pulled the trigger on it?
Yeah, so it was a combination of like the debt that I was accruing. It was that I got a consolidated debt loan for that and paid that off really quickly. And then I started asking around. I was like, hey, you know, are you willing to rent my room out long term? Because I knew some people that needed a room to stay in, and they were all only willing to pay about, 600-700 bucks. And I'm like, this is a really nice house. I got a gym, backyard, fire pit, like Florida room, ping pong table. Like, I think it's worth more than that. And so people were like, and they weren't really interested in anything more than that. So I was like, okay, let me give the private rooms a shot and the live-in host, because I've actually experienced that a lot in Europe. It's pretty common and it's kind of a foreign concept here. Like everyone asks me, like, Josh, isn't that weird for like random people to be in your house? And it actually isn't. Like it is when you think about it. But I've experienced it plenty of times in Europe, and I mean, a lot of times a host would be a female, right? For the rooms that I rent out for the house that I'm currently in now, I mean, I get a lot of females that pass through, and some of them are initially they're like, hey, I didn't know what to think, but like this was fantastic. I had a great time. So usually people are pretty good. I didn't know what to think, and I just kind of dove in because of that. It was like, let me just explore it. And if it's short term, so if it didn't work out for me, I was just gonna revert back to long term or just not do it at all. It doesn't hurt to try.
Totally. So what's the average amount of days that somebody would stay?
Oh, it varies. Like, so initially starting, just because reviews are everything, sometimes I do one day, or initially I would do one day to like kind of pack up my reviews and get a ton of them. Right now I'm sitting at about 350. I'm a super host for, since February of 2021. Um, but yeah, so maximum days is 31. I don't let people stay for longer than a month. But short, I mean, now it's about 2 days. I do about 2 days. But when I first got
Average is two
started, I
days.
was like, you can stay for one. Yeah, average. So average, I would say average is around 4 days. Like usually
Okay.
that's what I get. So
Okay.
3 to 4 days, like
So
a weekend stay typically. Mhm.
I do want to come back to this a little bit deeper, but I want to kind of get the overarching kind of profile put together real quick for our listeners. So those that
Yeah.
are out there that may not know Florida, so Fort Walton Beach, where is that? If I'm looking at Florida on a map, where is that?
Yeah. So that's on the Panhandle. It's about an hour east of Pensacola, very close to Destin, about 20 minutes away. Um, Panama City Beach is, 2 hours away to the east of Fort Walton Beach. But yeah, just right there in the Gulf.
Cool, cool. And so I personally have my own rental in Destin, and I'm in St. Louis, and St. Louis has a huge pipeline of people that know Destin area and then go there for vacation in the summertime, for weekly rental. So it's a big hotspot for weekly rentals. Those that may not know that. So the first property you got using your VA loan, zero money down, and then you started renting the rooms, and you mentioned between $40 a night, maybe even 250 a night, depending on the circumstances going on in the month of the year, whatever. And then fast forward the clock a number of months. I mean, what would be maybe a ballpark of or an average of just gross rent per month after a while?
Yeah, I think like the average for my 3 bedrooms would be around 3,500, just across I mean, because across the year, because in August, July, I mean, I'm making anywhere from like 10 to 12 grand. And again, that's
Gotcha.
15 minutes away from the beach. And then when it came to, the winter time, I'd usually just make, around what the mortgage is, 500 above. I mean, it kind of evens out to about 3,500.
That's crazy. So
Yeah.
I do want to come back to this because there's more logistics. I'm sure that someone will need to be aware of if they wanted to do this on their own.
Mhm.
So then what was the next step after that?
Yeah, so it was one room, one bedroom the first month, and I was like, holy shit, let's do the other room, right? I moved my desk out of that bedroom, put it in the Florida room, and put an actual bed in there with some furniture. And I did that one, and I was like, damn, that's that one was it doubled, right? So and then it's crazy story. My buddy, he lived right across the street from me, and I got him into the same thing, but he's in 7 Special Forces group directly across the street. He's like, hey man, if you want to just take a break from your Airbnb guests, you can come over and just like rent one of the rooms in my house for like 600 bucks a month. And in my head, like numbers start rolling out, and I'm like, hell yeah, I'll do that. So I move over to his house right before the summer hits, and start renting the entire house out. And people often ask the questions like, should I rent individual rooms in my house or should I rent the entire house? 100% you got to rent the entire house, because I moved out of there. And I mean, you got to think about like individual people, you got 1 to 2 people in each room, right? So 6 total people. So you market to 6 or 3 individual travelers, whether they're coupled or not, and then versus like a family, right? You can do 6, and then if you have a pull-out sofa, you can do 8. Really, whatever you're comfortable with. You don't want to overwhelm it, but you open up a possibility for families. Here's one real quick thing I like to touch on is like if say a family, right? It's got 6 people, they got to go to a hotel, and during peak season, that each individual hotel room could be 500 bucks a night, right? So we're talking 3 different hotel rooms if they're all couples, right?
Mhm.
That's 1,500 bucks a night. So they'd much rather rent your place out for 500-600 bucks a night, save money. They have all the kitchen things, TVs in every room, ping pong tables, like their own privacy, a gym, right? For that amount. And they're super happy for it because they're actually saving a lot of money. So I'm making a lot of money by moving out, and then they're saving a lot of money. So everyone's pretty happy.
So in that scenario, you're saying that the numbers end up working out better by being able to run the entire home as a package versus the individual rooms.
100%.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
I only
No,
do
that
the
makes sense.
individual. Yeah, I only do the individual rooms when I buy primary. I move into it. I rent out the rooms to start building some cash flow to get ready for the next purchase.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Cool. So then when was the second purchase after that?
The second purchase after that was about a year later. I stayed in my buddy's house on an air mattress because I was in debt, broke, and slowly coming out of that debt. And it was a terrible air mattress. Like I woke up every morning with like pains in my neck and everything. It was like it was the worst. But a year later, I bought my next property using an FHA loan, so I had to put 3.5% down. This was right during my transition out of the military, so you know, that like pretty much like I threaded the needle on that, and I pretty much had like a couple $100 in the bank account, and that was it. So I immediately threw in like air mattresses in all the rooms. I said, hey, I listed an air mattress on Airbnb. And I was like, look, 15, 20 bucks a night. Like it's just an air mattress. I didn't sugarcoat anything. Furniture's still on the way. Like it's a place to sleep, right? For super cheap. And started doing that, building up reviews, because it was priced obviously really well. But that helped me like smooth things over, and kind of get things going because you got those first few months like mortgage free,
Yeah.
typically month and a half ish.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it helped me like kind of get ahead as furniture was coming in, and then I slowly started to update those units and get pictures done when furniture came in, and then jack my prices up. But by then it had 10 5-star reviews each room, and it's a 4 bedroom. And this room I'm in now. And I bought 2 since then, but this one has a private entrance right here on the side, 2 driveways, backyard. So it was like perfect for me, you know. And the guests stay in the rooms that are back here towards my rear. It's where the kitchen and everything is.
Distance wise, how far away is it from the first one?
Uh, this one is about 2 miles south of it, so about roughly
Okay.
10 minutes. Yeah, it's in Fort Walton Beach, Hollywood
Closer to
Boulevard.
the water.
Yeah, closer to water. It's only about 11 minutes. No, actually, no, it's 9 minutes, 8 minutes from the beach. So
So from a lending side of things, you buy a property, you live in it, and then you buy the next one as a slight upgrade in some way, and you can call it a primary residence and then turn the old one into rental. We call that the stair step method on this channel.
mhm.
So in terms of the first one versus the second one, size wise, bath, beds, all that, was it a slight upgrade, or how comparable is it to the first one,
Yeah, the
or
first
price?
Yeah, the first one was a 3-2, 3 bedrooms, 2 bath for those that are listening. 2,000 square feet. They're both about the same square footage. This one's actually a little bit like 100, maybe 50 square feet smaller, but it's got 4 bedrooms. So the first one had 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, full bath, and then this one has 4 bedrooms, 3 bath. So got an extra bedroom out of it, closer to the water. It's a really, really nice. It's a corner lot. But yeah, I justified it through, they're of course the underwriters are gonna ask me like, what's your justification for it? And the place that I was in previously, I mean, it was near a um trailer park. There was a pit bull that busted through my fence actually. There was a few things, and since then we got like the fence repaired. But I was able to justify it. An extra room, an extra
Yeah.
bathroom, for different reasons, and there's a way to do it. So
Awesome. Awesome. So you got the four bedrooms. You mentioned two two driveways.
yeah, so it's a corner lot, so it's got like one on the side here, right out this back door, with 2 lanes, and then there's one straight back in front of the house. So it's perfect. So I assign, each guest has a driveway lane, and then I park where I park, just like kind of off on the curb on the side of the road.
Cool.
It works out for me. So yeah.
Cool. So the numbers that you gave us before, that was in terms of the room rentals, 50 to 150. That was on the first one. So should we assume that this one is somewhat similar?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, it's pretty similar to that.
cool. Okay. Okay. So you have the second property, you buy as a primary residence,
Mhm.
FHA, 3.5% down payment. And then you mentioned you purchased a couple more since then. So
Yep.
can you give us some more outline of what that looked like? Because it sounds like you didn't buy them as primary residences.
Right. No. So the next two, I partnered up. I was having a lot of difficulty getting loans just because, again, I've gotten out of the military. I was doing really, really well as a realtor by this point, and I'm like, man, I've got money in the bank now. I've got like hardly any debt. Why can't I buy a home? But everyone, like, lenders need, this, lenders need
Yeah.
that history, right, of tax returns. So I didn't have that in my new current job. So I had to get creative. And there was a buddy of mine, his VA eligibility was only a certain amount, right? So he ended up he only had about, what was it, like, I think he only had 250, right? So he had 250. So he wanted a house in like 300 range. We kept looking for a while. We ended up saying like, hey, like this is a really good like BRRRR opportunity, right? You could live in it for like, for however long, and then we can end up renting it like later on down the road because it was going to be his primary. And so we ended up doing that, and then we bird it, right? And then so we put about 50K into it. Bought it for 250, put about 50K into it, so it was about 300 skin in the game. And then we're looking to refinance it actually here in a few months, and then pull that cash out, and then pay off our contractors, our hard money lender, which our hard money lender paid the contractors, so we'll just pay the hard money lender, pay for all the furniture and everything. But that's already cash flowing, man. That we did we did 4K in September for that one. And that's a tiny, like, 1,000 square foot house.
So and then how many beds and baths?
three beds, two bath, 1,000 square
Okay.
feet. But we were knocking. I mean, it's an awesome property. It's a mile away from Navarre Beach. It's right there by like
Uh,
the front porch. So it was perfect. Everyone
uh,
loves it. Yeah.
that's awesome. So, did you say that you did a VA loan on it or no?
Yeah, we did a VA loan on it and the prime
Combined your entitlements together to be able to do no down payment?
yeah, so my buddy used his VA loan, right?
Uh-huh.
And I paid the closing costs for it. And then
Okay.
he lived in it for a little bit. And then slowly transformed that into a BRRRR property.
Gotcha.
So over time we BRRRRed it. Um, but yeah, no, it was great. So partnerships is something that you can absolutely do. So to dial that back or bring that back, I actually because you can't. I was his realtor, so I couldn't pay his closing costs. So I did not do that. His his
I mean,
buddy,
you could give them a credit, right? That's part
yeah,
of what some realtors can do for some clients here and there.
yeah, I could do that. So like what we did, now that I recall it, his family member gifted him funds to close, and then we quit claimed me to the title, and then I funded the BRRRR project and a lot of the, just different money and things to bring the house up to speed. So I came out of pocket about 25K to help bring the property up to like, a good rental position.
And that was late 21 or was it this year?
This year.
This year. Cool. Cool. Um, and obviously this year, in terms of the housing market and the mortgage rates, it's just a lot of change. So, a lot of uncertainty in the markets. So
Yeah.
that's a whole different conversation. And then
Yeah.
I guess there was a fourth one, right?
Yeah. So I actually closed on that 2 weeks ago. This one I used a DSCR loan. So come January when I file for taxes, February, like I'll have my second year with tax returns outside of the Army. So that'll put me in a better position to get loans. But again, you gotta be creative, and sometimes you gotta pay to play if you really want to get ahead in your certain whatever circumstance you're in. So I used the SDR loan, investment loan. I can't recall exactly what the acronym states, even though I looked it up like 10 times and I've read it. I always forget it.
Debt
But
debt service coverage ratio. Things like that.
there you go. Yeah, exactly. That's it. So, but yeah, it's an investment loan, and I had to put 20% down on the property. It was only $200,000. And as everyone knows, the market was shifting, and it's shifted since then, right? Since like the summertime, early this year. Um, and I got the seller to pay for the entire rewire of the house, and that was 25K with like all the walling and everything, baseboards, like repairing everything and turning into copper wiring, right? So they did that before closing, and then I've got my guys in there now actually like doing all the updates and everything and getting it going. But yeah, I used that, and I had to put 20% down plus closing costs. But after you kind of build things up and you get your business going, your short-term rental business going, you kind of build that capital. And what I always recommend, like people starting off, is like buy something that's ready to go right now. If like you're kind of tight on cash, maybe you have the VA loan, maybe you don't. You close, you get your first unit up and running, you house hack it, and then you start building that capital. Maybe you do that one more time with another house, and then you're starting to get creative and use different loans where you're able to put more money down to get different things and different types of homes, and slowly start to build your portfolio, if you will. Yeah.
So that DSCR loan, you're talking, it's a different type of loan. They're basing it off of the actual property's rental income as opposed to someone's personal income. So it's a different product. It falls into a different class, and so rates are typically going to be higher than they would be on just your regular residential loans. Does that sound right?
Yeah. So I actually went through a broker for that, and I didn't have the greatest experience because I didn't understand like what a broker does as a lender or a loan broker is they they hire out the lenders and they're other people's underwriters and stuff. So they don't actually work directly with those guys. So I learned a valuable lesson. My broker, we hired a lender and last minute things were popping up and we're like, dude, we're closing tomorrow. Like, why is this now coming up now? Like, oh, like for example, Josh, you weren't a landlord for 12 months total. You were only a landlord for 11 months. So now we're going to charge you an additional 5%. This was literally the day before closing. And so the broker was like, hey, I'm so sorry. Like, here are your options. We can go get another lender and kind of extend things. So we ended up getting another lender who was cool with me only being a landlord, because the way my timeline worked with my previous rentals, like it only added up to 11 months. So they needed 12 months was a requirement for them to issue the loan out for this DSCR loan. And so that happened. So like as far as timing, my situation was a little unique because I had the house rewired. The rewiring only took about 6 days, 6 to 7 days. But like the county coming out to rewire or to inspect it, that took like 2 weeks, so it didn't take terribly long to close on this house. It took about a month and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, but not bad. It really depends on all the different work you need to do, but it's very different in the sense that typical lenders and your insurance companies, they're like with a normal loan, they're going to be like, hey, this house needs to be like ready to go pretty much, like to occupy. Like this house, when I closed on it, like the walls were open, the wires were showing, they were still walling it up, but it was inspected. It was like, hey, insurance was good, the 4 point reflected it. And it was a investment loan, so like they didn't require for it to be like completely done. So I was actually able to close a lot sooner with the rewire through this loan because of those like requirements, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a whole other conversation, the residential side of things versus like your commercial lending, private lending, hard money stuff I did a commercial loan when I bought my short-term rental in 21. Because at the time I had a flip going, I had all this money moving back and forth and going on. It's like me being in the business, I know they're gonna, dig into all my bank statements and all the deposits, and it's just gonna be a nightmare. And at the end of the day, I was buying it in my LLC anyway,
Yeah.
for liability purposes. And so they just, look at your PFS, looked at your credit, looked at your assets, make sure the property was good to go, and it was relatively simple. Now,
Yeah.
the appraisal process for me, again, this is early 21. Appraisal took like over a month to get done.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. So yeah, the commercial lending side of things is totally different, especially in time frame compared to the residential side of things. So just so the listeners have an idea of that extra stuff too. So this DSCR loan, this was the third one or the fourth one?
This is the fourth one. Yeah,
The
this
fourth
just
one.
happened a few weeks
Okay.
ago.
Okay.
It's closed on it.
Okay. Cool. So when you fast forward the clock a year or 5 or 10 years, like what all these things that you've gone through and learned, and we're not even talking about your realtor job yet. There's a lot there too. But when you fast forward the clock, that time frame, what do you see kind of in your horizons for down the road? What do you see that looking like?
Yeah, so next year, so we'll go by years. I've only got a few years kind of played out in my head, but I plan on getting about 3 to 4 units next year. The last 2 years were 2 years or 2 units per year. Excuse me, one. It was really one the first year and then three the next year. But like my plan is to get 3 to 4 units for this next year, and then the year after that, buying a commercial like apartment complex, maybe a smaller 6 unit, 8 unit one somewhere on the Gulf Coast, and potentially looking at, short-term renting all those as well. So like, furnishing it, and if it
Wow.
really depends on like where it's at and like what type of, how close it is to the water,
Mhm.
different things. But that might be a long-term venture, that my first time dipping into long-term rentals. But yeah, I plan on doing that. And then also with the Turo business, I've scaled that. Like I'm not a huge fan of cars. It's just not my thing. I love brick and mortar. That's my jam there. But I do plan on getting a few more because I've got a buddy that manages it for me. So I pay him to run the Turo business. I've got two Jeeps, a 2021 Gladiator, a 2021 Wrangler, and
Mhm.
I just plan on getting like two or three more over the next 2 to 3 years, and then but I just really don't want it to affect my personal DTI. So what I've learned is, and maybe you can correct me if
Hold,
I'm wrong.
hold on one second. So
Mhm.
for those that don't know what the Turo business is, can you give us a little bit of just general background on that?
Yeah, yeah. So Turo is like rental. It's a rental car. It's almost like Airbnb for cars. And it's a personal vehicle that's managed through a site called Turo. And you can advertise your car. It's got to be a certain year. It can't be like a really old car. It's got to have the inspections done for it to be featured on the platform. Turo insures it through the host, so the host pays like a percentage of the revenue for insurance for each ride. So if anything happens, you've got that insurance. You've got obviously the rider's insurance. You've got the person, if another person hits your guy like or girl, they've got insurance hopefully. But yeah, so like you've got those kind of layers, and they market your vehicle, and then you kind of like what got me into that was the shortage on rental cars. There was a shortage on
Yeah.
rental cars here in the last few years, and I was like, man, like I've the car I drive now, it's a beater. It's like 11 years old, but it's paid off. I haven't made a mortgage or a note on it for 5 years, and I just bought these two Jeeps. But buying, and I know I'm bouncing around. If you need to dial me in, just
No,
let me.
no, this is good. This is good. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually bought the two Jeeps under my business LLC, and I was like, yeah, it won't affect my personal DTI. Well, I was and this is why I'm hesitant about vehicles, is because it affects your DTI to an extent, right? So like I bought it through my business LLC. I had to be the guarantor to that loan for those vehicles. And so after you show a year of you paying off that vehicle under the business LLC, like that falls off your DTI, your personal DTI, in terms of a lender. At least that's what the conversation I had with my other lender that I use.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know if that's anything that you've experienced before or heard about.
If it shows up on your personal credit,
Yeah,
then yeah, that sounds about right. Which if they're having you as a personal guarantor, then that sounds like that's what happened.
yeah, yeah. So I kind of just dabbled in a lot of those different things, but yeah,
But no, but see that's such an interesting, kind of segue because all these little details make a difference for when you're planning for the next one, right? I mean, you're talking about, hey, well, do I buy this in my personal name or in my business? Well,
yeah,
how is this other venture you're doing? How's it going to affect this other thing that you're doing, the real estate side of things? Um, and it's just very interesting how it all fits together. But then
yeah.
now you get your full year out of it, then things can adjust and change. Um, so back to how you got into it. So you were saying that the shortage of rental cars. Any more explanation on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's Destin, this area is just a very highly trafficked area. And so people are constantly coming in and out all the time, especially during the summer. I mean, there was like Jeepalooza. It's like a Jeep event that happens, I think, once a year. At least I saw it last year for the first time. Jeeps are everywhere. And I've always kind of wanted a Jeep. I thought they were great, but I didn't buy one because of the gas mileage. But if I could drive it every now and then, and like my customers can pay the gas, and why not, right? So like I got into it because I like a lot of actually my Airbnb guests were flying in, and a couple of them they were like, "Hey, there's like no rental cars available. Uber is like non-existent right now because they're just tapped out and they're charging like $1 million." I was like, you know what? I'll come pick you up, no worries. So that was actually the defining moment where I was like, maybe I should look into like buying vehicles, and maybe renting those out I was thinking about tying it to the Airbnb, like the actual Airbnb, and a lot of people ask me if I do that, and I don't recommend it because it's hard to sync like calendars and stuff. People just rent it through the Turo website as opposed to the Airbnb. I do advertise both me as a
Yeah.
realtor, a lot of different things on my Airbnb, like automatic messages and stuff. Like, hey, here's my link to my Turo website. If you need a vehicle, check availability on it, but they don't go hand in hand. So, but that was like the defining moment that got me into it.
Yeah, I mean, I know when I closed on my rental in the beginning of 21, it all kind of happened pretty fast. So like we flew down for the actual closing and there were no rental cars available. So we had to like book it through like a personal car service. And so I was driving around in some like crazy big Jeep looking thing that whatever. But yeah, no, and I that was in 21, so I don't know how different it is today in that market, but that
Yeah.
totally makes sense. So from a dollar standpoint, you know, your payment is XYZ, and then your average rentals on the from Turo are what? How does that look like from a dollar standpoint?
Yeah, like with the business, because it was brand new, I bought these two vehicles. So my note is a little higher, right? But I I don't let like an interest rate, for the most part, or like a note like deter me from diving into something. Like I just do it, right? So like this thing, my note for the Gladiator, and that's the Jeep with the pickup, and it's got a convertible top. It is around upper 800s or maybe 900, low 900 bucks a month. I'd make anywhere from 1,500 bucks to 2,500 a month, depending on the season, and what time of year it is. Same with the Wrangler. The Wrangler, a little bit less. People tend to just really like because it's the Gladiator's like green and army green. It looks really cool, and people are like, oh, I've never driven one of these Gladiators before. I kind of want to drive it. But the Wrangler does pretty well too. Similar numbers, maybe a little bit lower, but both of them, like, they make good money. And the thing about those is like sometimes anything that you're doing, like, people, and it's the same with short-term rentals and long-term rentals. It's like you're going to make a ton of money in season, and you got to be okay with like not making as much out of season, right? Like you're not going to just crush it the entire year most of the time. Like maybe sometimes you will, depending on what you got, but um a lot of people aren't okay with that. And it's like, hey, if you're making 50, 60K on an Airbnb rental, or like you're doing 30K per vehicle with Jeeps, then why do you care if like December you only got one renter? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so people have to just be kind of comfortable with that. So
So kind of back to the you mentioned maybe getting three or four next year, and then in terms of properties, and
mhm.
then down the road getting into apartment complexes. You know, we're talking about cash flow, right? But at the same time, we're talking about people. Why do people get into real estate? Why do people purchase rentals? You know, if somebody else is making your mortgage payment essentially with the rents, that mortgage balance is getting paid down. And in the last 10 years, values have gone up, right? In the last 6 months, values have gone down in some places. Um, but historically, values have always gone up. And so when you fast forward the clock 10 more years, values more certainly will be higher than where they are right now. And so you're talking about just massive amounts of equity build up
Yeah,
over a period of time. And then you start talking about some of the tax benefits as well. And that's a
yeah,
whole different conversation. I'm not a CPA, so I'm not going to act like I know what I'm talking about on that. Um, but me personally, I did a cost segregation in my own taxes because of the number of rentals that I have, including the one in Destin, and that allowed me to use an accelerated depreciation strategy and minimize some of my tax liability on my W-2 job, which I
yeah,
wasn't able to do before. So that's a whole different conversation, maybe down the
yeah,
road. So,
yeah,
and then all along the way, you have your real estate license
yeah.
and doing uh, that in that world. Um, can you kind of just walk us through that process? I mean, getting your license, starting out, was it easy? Was it hard?
Yeah, it's honestly, it came I got my license at a very good time when the market was, super hot. we're in a great area for people just purchasing. It was just after COVID, so like everyone was trying to move down here. And I moved down here during COVID, so it was July of 2020. And then got out the next year. But yeah, it was it the Airbnb kind of sparked my desire to get more smart on real estate. It's like, hey, like if I'm gonna get more units, like why not be an expert on the market? Why not negotiate my own deals and collect your commission? So it just made sense to me. And then, I started helping other people do that too. And I love, specifically military or anybody for that matter that's just trying to get ahead in life and like build passive income. It's like, hey, I've done this before. Like I was in a very bad spot. Let me show you how. And so like I did that a few times and it was just like, man, it was just so fulfilling just to like negotiate deals for someone else and then see them grow over time. And they were in like a similar position as me. So that's what really sparked it. And then I was with Coldwell, and Coldwell is just like a phenomenal brokerage. I absolutely love working with Coldwell. I just really like they really helped me get my business going. And so it just kind of caught fire and I absolutely love it. So
I love that. I mean, in my world, right? I mean, we're commission based, salespeople, right? I mean, we help people buy houses, and but at the end of the day, if we're not helping people buy houses, then we're not getting paid. And that's just the nature of our business. And you guys is the same. It's just a different mentality. So when you get up every single day, you know, what do you have a process in the morning that gets you focused? Do you have anything that you do throughout the week that keeps you on track, or tell us about that?
yeah, I mean, it's definitely important to have an agenda and just kind of a routine. Um, for me, if like anyone knows me, like they know that I do like a million things every day, and my schedule is just usually all over the place. Just because I have so many things going on, and I've got so many different like initiatives and stuff. I just came back from a Generation Blue like Coldwell Banker convention once a year in Phoenix, and it kind of helped dial me into certain things that I want to try to refocus on and build my like whiteboard and plan for the next year, but or really from here on forward. But routine wise, like I love working out. So I hit the gym in the morning and really that like kickstarts my day. Like you get a good meal, try to get some good rest, um, hit the gym, and then right after that, like you start prospecting. I check like, Airbnb, make sure everything's going well there. Um, but really, and it's really just checking in on different things and reaching out, but you want to start the day off right to get things going in the right direction. So,
Totally. And I should have done this a lot sooner. But for the listeners out there, where can they find you?
so you can call or text 850-737-8830, or you can find me on my Instagram. It's Josh underscore real estate tycoon is my real estate handle. And then my personal handle is Josh dot Ronin, Ronin underscore underscore for my personal handle.
Cool, cool. So, but that's not your last name.
No.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain that or no?
Yeah. No, I'd love to. It's a word I've kind of grown attached to. I actually had a pretty interesting childhood growing up, and very, very bad situation in terms because I grew up in Baltimore. Family broke up. Dad and mom did everything they could, but it was just not the right environment for me. So I ended up joining the military. 11 years later, you kind of, if anyone's been in the military and you're always gone, you kind of get detached from the world, and you kind of lose that like sense of family. Like your brothers and sisters in arms are your family, right? So like from then, like I love the army and everything it's taught me. But there is a certain layer of, I wouldn't want to call it brainwashing, but you have to condition your mind to a certain thing to do certain things, right? And like your day to day. It's like, hey, you gotta do these things to get promoted. And then it's the same with life, right? They tell you like go to college, do these things, get these degrees, stair step the corporate ladder, right? And it's a formula, right? But it it's something like entrepreneurship, and this is like what we kind of briefly touched on before, is like, something that the education system and like the military, of course, like they don't teach you that. So what Ronin was for me is like it was an epiphany I had in the military. It was like I was a major, right? So I was making some like close to 100K a year, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, what is wrong with you? You're getting out, you're making all this money." I was like, "Dude, I'm in debt. Like, I don't know what is going on right now. Like, obviously need to check my spending habits, but I need to figure out something else." And I started listening to the podcasts and started to figure things out on my own. So what Ronin means is, to go back to your question, it's someone, goes back to the Japanese, era, where, a samurai would be training under somebody, and maybe his master dies, or maybe he's exiled for some reason because he isn't going following the beaten path, right? And he's no longer affiliated with a certain tribe. So he goes and formulates his own, or forges his own path. He's masterless is another thing that does it. So like, part of that was like me breaking away from the army. It's like I'm gonna do my own thing. And my other buddies are like, dude, you need to go get an MBA. And it's like, I'm not knocking anybody that's going to get an MBA, but like, educational debt's one thing that's unforgivable. You can't file bankruptcy on that. But like, and it's great, but a lot of people just do it just because they think that's what you have to do. And then they're still jobless after it. Like they're like, I'm in debt now, and like it's hard for me to find a job. So it was a mindset for me to get into my own thing and figure it out myself. And it's just something I really love. It's a word that that resonates with me.
I love that. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations in this time frame, about the idea of generating income in different ways coming out of COVID, right? I mean, so many people, we're at home all day working remotely or whatever, and then you have Uber and Lyft come on strong, and just there's so many different ways people are making money outside of your normal 9 to 5 corporate job. And I mentioned on a couple other places that, if we go into a recession, this society has never been more prepared for a recession than right now, with the different
Oh
ways that
yeah.
people can generate income. But you're talking, this desire to kind of go down this path and house hack, and that drive to go do something on your own and kind of break away from the path and get out of the military. That's kind of before this kind of COVID became, thing with everybody working from home.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you get there? How did you get to that mindset where you say, you know what, I don't need to have this similar path that somebody else is going. I believe in this other path. How did you get to that point?
Yeah, so I'm in the military. I was as an officer, like, I mean, really every branch is different, every MOS is different, every job position is different, but I was in the infantry, paratrooper. So we're, doing a lot of planning to jump into different countries, do airfield seizures, a lot of training with, our foreign partners. It was just nonstop, man. And honestly, like I was at a point where I was, pretty depressed, had a lot of anxiety. I didn't show it, of course. Like you can't show any of that stuff. And it's very unhealthy. I mean, you can, but it's like you'd be looked at differently. Like, what's wrong with
Mm-hmm.
you, man? Suck it up. You know what I mean? So, like, the breaking point was, it was just, I mean, it was all of that. Like, it was the op tempo, the operational tempo of my schedule. And it's just like you're gone all the time. You're working these crazy hours every day. You're stressed out because like there's a million things that you've got to do. And it's like I'm getting paid a lot from the outside perspective, but it's like, dude, if you equate that into hours, it's like $3 an hour. Like you're not making that much money, and you're getting stressed out all for what, pension after 20 years. Like, so for me, I'm like, I'll cut ties, to say thank you to the army, because it's done a lot for me. 100%, not bashing the army, because we were go-getters, man. We were like hustling, training nonstop. But I'll collect my disability and move forward with my other ventures and things that I want to accomplish. And, you don't want to miss out on, your younger years, like doing something if you're not fully invested in it. Now, had we been in a state of war, like it'd be a different conversation. You know what I mean? I'd still be in, because I would feel like I'm more so needed. But they're gonna replace me, like, just like anyone else, like just thinking about getting out. Like you're essential, but you will be replaced. Like it's not gonna be an issue. But because we're in a state of, garrison, it's called a garrison army. It's like, we're just training, building relationships and stuff. And like, so you're training nonstop. Like it's ridiculous with an occasional deployment. But yeah, I just wanted, that was my breaking point right there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the whole entrepreneur mindset, lifestyle, like I feel like I'm on that path, right? I mean, I've got real estate, I've got a podcast, I'm in the mortgage industry. Like, we run on adrenaline, trying to make things happen. The more you work, the better you do your job, the more you can get paid. That's just kind of how I'm wired myself.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a mentor. I read a bunch of books, your Rich Dad Poor Dad, a bunch of other things along the way. And I never really had that person to say, hey, if you do X, Y, Z, then you will get to this place. Um, for your journey, did you like, what were some of the inspirations, or did you have anybody that was, helping you along the way as you've kind of gotten further down this journey?
Yeah. No, I didn't. And I I got started late, and I think I heard you say like you were working on a flip at 21. Was that right?
In the year 2021,
Oh,
not 21 years old. In
I
20,
was gonna
yeah.
say, man, like you got a great head start. I didn't
No,
get
no,
started.
mine's late.
Yeah, and it's never too late, right? Like, but um, I didn't get started until I was about 32. But I didn't have a mentor, and in terms of that, like I said, my parents split up. Still had a good relationship with my dad. My mother was, she was pretty poor. We were pretty poor growing up. But for my dad actually retired 3 times. So he's doing really well. Well, excuse me, he retired from the Marine Corps, then the NSA. Now he's a real estate agent in Hawaii. So we were close, but we're not like super close, I guess, if that makes sense. But he, one thing, and I don't want to, I'm not bashing my dad, but one thing I really wish was like, hey, like my dad's he's a millionaire, right? So like, why couldn't I get that from you? You know what I mean? Like, show me the way, right? And like teach me. But, I guess like, I don't know. We just didn't have that type of relationship. And then I didn't have anyone else that I could like grab their coattail from. But yeah, so that's kind of like where I didn't get my inspiration from people or another person. It was just really from doing my own research, and I luckily I got an epiphany. But now I got a guy who's the guy that's running my Turo business. I'm like, look, man, I think he's 23. I'm like, look, man, like this is what you need to do. Like just grab a hold of my coattail, and like you will be successful. I can almost guarantee it. And so he's on his second property. He's managing my Turo fleets. I'm showing him how to do the Airbnb thing. I think he picked up his third from his like grandfather, but that's something that I really want to do is like give back and teach somebody that, that I couldn't, something that I wish I would have been taught.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, kind of just figuring it out on your own. Like I remember in 2017, I took a leap, and I went from the banking world to Fairway, and like in my career, in 2012 and 2013, I had really good years. 2016, I had a career year, and in the middle of that journey in 2016, like we knew that the bank that we were at that had just gotten bought out wasn't going to
Yeah.
be the right fit because of just the culture and our growth mindset and whatnot. And so, 2016, halfway through the year, we spent 6 months looking for our next destination, and we got to Fairway. And Fairway is a very entrepreneurial company, and it's part of the reason why I'm even here today talking to you about this stuff, right? That mindset. So we had no idea, but when we got to Fairway, a lot of the other branch managers that ran branches in different parts of the country, they would buy a commercial building and then run, basically lease them the office back to the branch and basically buy, lease themselves. And so we had never even thought about that, but we did, and we got a good property and renovated it and all this stuff. And that same year, I bought a couple 4 families at pretty good prices in St. Louis, and they cash flowed okay, and I was just going about my business for the next however many years. I mean, little did I know, values kept going up and going up and going up and going up. And so it's more than doubled since then. And I was able to leverage a little bit of cash out to be able to help with the down payment on my Destin short-term rental. And just the idea of time, in the moment, I had no idea what was going to happen, but like looking back on it, it's like, shit, if I knew now what I know now what I could have had in 2017, I would have bought more of those, obviously hindsight's 2020, but like the power of time and letting compounding work on paying down the mortgage and values going up over 10 years, 20 years, like no one taught me that. I had no idea. I was just doing it because it made sense in my brain at the time. But like all the things you're doing, right? I mean, just letting time then fast forward and compound for you with the values and compounding and all that stuff. So it's just crazy. Once you get started, get that ball rolling, then get some momentum, then a lot of amazing things can be possible.
Yeah,
So
no,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, I was just saying, and it's just like a lot of people just think like, man, I need like 100 units or 100 doors. It's like, no, man, you really don't. Like, you only need 10 units, 10 good units that are paid off, right? And even if you're not doing short term, you can do long term, right? And if you're cash flowing 12,000 bucks on all 10 units, that's significant. That's over 20 grand a year, or excuse me, 2,000. So yeah, 20 grand per month, right? And like, that's a lot of money, right? And that's all passive. So you
Mhm.
make that over time. And even if you're breaking even, like you've got a rental property, you're breaking even, like you said, you're still building equity. And like it's a crazy thing. People don't understand what equity is. They hear it, not, I mean, a lot of people don't. Like they're just like, how does that work for me? That I'd rather just rent. And it's like, no, man, you rent, like you're just throwing that money out of the window. I would much rather pay more for a mortgage than just to rent, because rent's insane nowadays anyways, and you're not getting anything for that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and what's crazy, kind of going back into the military VA loan side of things, like I've seen people do some pretty creative stuff, because you're talking a zero money down loan, and the loan limits, I think what they're 647 right now, and they're going to be 700 next year. But going a few years back, I mean, I saw somebody buy $180,000 townhouse in Temple Hills, Maryland, which that's a pretty low price in that market.
Yeah.
And there's some other areas that are quite a bit more expensive. And then the next year, he bought one for 300,000, turned the old one to rental. And the next year, he bought another one for around 450, and
Yeah.
had to put a little bit of money down on that one. So he used
Mhm.
his VA loan 3 times in about 4 or 5 years,
Yep.
and almost put nothing down. And it's like,
I love that.
now values are going up, and he's got cash flow. Like that lower price point property cash flows the most out of all of them. Like the two other ones combined, cash flow doesn't even equal the smallest one. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy how some of these numbers work out. You think you got to buy expensive property to cash flow. You don't always have to buy an expensive property to cash flow,
No.
depending on the
Yeah,
area.
not at all. Not at all. And I can't wait for like a year from now where I can break down the numbers for this house I bought. The last one I bought, 200,000 was a purchase price, and then my interest rate was over 9. So everyone and their mom is gonna be like, "Oh my God, like you're like, why would you do that?" I'm gonna show you what I cash flow, and I'm gonna tell you why, like through numbers. So, and that's something that I'm in the middle of doing, is like getting all the numbers for all my Airbnb properties, kind of doing some more analysis, and that way I can give better data to my clients and then people that want to do Airbnb and stuff like that. So
Yeah, and then when you have more history on paper on your returns of showing all of the schedules and income, and it opens up more doors with more lending opportunities,
yeah,
as well. So this
yeah,
is good
absolutely.
stuff. So what you're saying is we're gonna have to have you back on sometime down the road and talk some more numbers.
Yeah, no, I'd
Dig,
absolutely.
dig back in. And anything else you want to share with the listeners? Any advice that you would give somebody right now that wants to become an entrepreneur, or get into it, or get into real estate? Any advice along those lanes?
Yeah, I think so. The biggest thing is like for me is, you got to take risks, and you guys hear it all the time is like, yeah, take risks, take risks. But not very many people actually do it, right? So they do what they're comfortable for. They're like, hey, I can't do this. This is not what I was trained to do or what I learned in high school or college. Like you're not going to learn how to do that. Like begin as an entrepreneur. Like that's something that you have to figure out yourself. So at a young age, you need to take a shit ton of risks, right? You need to just, if you don't know what you want to do, like listen to a few podcasts, listen to like, just some investor podcasts, like entrepreneur podcasts, read Rich Dad Poor Dad, listen, like do your research, right? But don't do too much research. A lot of the stuff that you're going to learn is like, is when you're actually doing it. So you make a lot of mistakes, even if it fails, right? If you start something and it fails, like you're going to be so far ahead than you would be if you were to not do anything, right? And then just read a bunch of books and you're like, oh yeah. Like you learn so much just by doing it. So you just get out there, execute, like buy your rental in, or buy a house like as soon as possible, even if you're just living in it. Like as soon as you possibly can, you need to buy a house. Because like if you think about all the billionaires in the world, like I guarantee you, like all of them have rental properties, right? Like there's
100%.
no other way around it. Like you like and people are like, hey, I want to, wait until the market changes. It's like, all right, wait until the interest rates are back down and you're trying to outbid 20 other people. Like
Yeah.
whereas right now I'm selling a few houses for other people and like I'm getting roofs replaced. Like we're going 30 grand under asking. Like they're getting all this other stuff replaced. I'm actually that the call I just got was for a replacement for a seller that I have that the buyer was like, we need a new water heater. Like we need a new this and that. So I'm like trying to get all that fixed for the buyer. Like now is a good time to buy, contrary to what everyone else is saying. So just take the risks and get out there, figure out what you like, see what sticks. You can do a shit ton of things at first and then focus on what you like and what you're good at. Like after some time doing that. Cause I did Lyft. I was a notary. Like I was, doing Turo and then the Airbnb thing when I first started. And then I was renting out paddle boards and like coolers and additional beach equipment and stuff. So I really did a lot of different things that, I just saw what stuck with me and what I really liked doing. And it was 100% like Airbnbs. And
Yeah, I want to dig back just for a second here
yeah,
on taking the risks part of it, because you have this delicate balance, right? You want to be educated on something, you want to take an educated risk, but at the same time, you don't want to have that paralysis by analysis, where
yeah.
then by the end of it, you don't do anything, and you got to find that balance. And when you mentioned people with real estate, right? Like the billionaires have real estate. My own vision, my own goals, right? Like my own journey, all the things that I've read and learned, and people have helped me along, like even my own business coaching. You know, there's a book that I read in 2018 called The Power of Consistency by Weldon
Hmm.
Long. This guy was in jail 3 different times, and he came across some books by Stephen Covey and Tony Robbins. His dad passed away, so he had this fire and this fuel in his body to try to do something better for his life and his kid that he was missing the 3-year-old's life because he was in jail. But in the book, he talks about his prosperity plan, and he's basically filling his mind with the thoughts that he wants to fill it with. Right, he has intentionally about what he wants to think about, and he's basically programming his subconscious brain with his vision and goals and the action
Hmm.
items that gets there, and literally is programming it every single day. Just like you drive your car home from work after a long day and you're on the phone, you stop by a drive-through and you're leaving it out of traffic and you're on the phone, you're not thinking about the actual driving of the directions. Like you're on autopilot. Your subconscious brain is literally, taking you home safely, and you're out of
Yeah.
your house, and you're good to go, right? Without thinking about it consciously. So he talks about that type of harnessing that power to be able to reach your goal. And so for me personally, like taking risks and things like that, like I had to do something for myself, to put these goals and visions in my brain, and to be able to take some of these risks and get out of my own comfort zone. So something I do every single day. And so just something to think about if you're out there. This stuff doesn't happen overnight. It takes day in, day out, focusing on your goals and focusing on the little bitty action item it takes to be able to get there. So, but like, yeah, I mean, the real estate side of things, my own vision is get more property, and not have to pay taxes, right? Like
Yeah,
that's my own goalpost that I'm shooting after. So,
absolutely. Yeah,
um,
absolutely, man.
good stuff. Well, any other advice or words of wisdom you have?
Um, yeah. Well, for as far as the Airbnb thing, just kind of start slow, get the basics down, get your first unit running. There's multiple layers in Airbnb if we're talking specifically short-term rentals. And I say Airbnb a lot because I love Airbnb and that's what I started with. But I'm actually on multi-platforms, right? And so I have a what we call a PMS, a primary property management software. And I advertise on my personal, so I have a direct booking website. I've got Verbo, I've got Airbnb, of course, and I'm working towards getting on booking.com, but booking.com is not a very user-friendly platform, and it's very hard to integrate with. I use Guesty as my PMS. So there's layers of doing that, and like there's always room to get better. Like everyone thinks Airbnb, it's like, oh yeah, that's super easy, that's super cool. It's very simple. Like you just get into it and you do this, and it's like, no, there's absolute layers on like getting ahead and like building your business as a short-term rental host. Because like at the end of the day, like Verbo, Airbnb, they're collecting, 5 to 8% on Verbo, and then Airbnb's collecting 3% for host fees, right? And then they're charging your guests a shit ton of money. So if you can kind of monetize or like advertise your personal website, it's like, hey, you can book and you can get 10 to 15% off because Airbnb and Verbo aren't charging you all these extra prices and fees. I'm just going to charge you a sales tax. I don't have to personally pay Airbnb, Verbo 5 to 8% and 3%, so we're all winning. But what the goal should be is like, hey, like direct booking website, building your own business. So you got to like, don't think you got to take baby bites or small bites of the elephant, right? Because it's a lot to kind of chew, but the best thing to do is just kind of get started and you just kind of figure out things on your own, you know.
Love it. So for the listeners out there, again, just so they can get this in their brains, because you're one of the best in the business down there. How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can reach me on the phone. So 850-737-8830. You can email me josh.legare, LEG at CB, like Coldwell Banker Realty.com. I'm also my real estate handle is Josh underscore real estate tycoon. And then my personal is Josh.Ronin, RONIN underscore underscore. But yeah, happy to kind of give any advice or talk to anybody about, buying their rental property, or, if they're managing their short-term rental, like, hey, like, if they need some advice, some direction, happy to give that as well. Turo, whatever it is, you kind of get like the full package when people buy with me. Like I tell everyone, if you buy a house or a rental property through me as your agent, like I help you soup to nuts, like get your whole business going, like give you direction, and I check up on you pretty often and make sure like, all right, like you got this set up, like now we need to start looking at these things to accelerate that. So
So one more question. So let's say somebody purchases a straight up, short-term rental down there. In terms of management, what do you advise your clients to do for on that respect? If they can't do it themselves?
yeah, so that's there's plenty of management companies out here. I actually do property management. I have three to four other properties. Some of them I'm picking up. I dropped a few, or the owners had to use the property, so we ended up not advertising their properties. But for me personally, like I do property management. I'm still trying to dial in that price as to like what exactly is the sweet spot for both parties. But all of my clients have different types of packages. Some offer 15%, where they do a lot of the work, or like restocking of perishable items and cleaning. They pay the cleaners. And I do more of the advertising, communication with guests, and like if I need to go to the property to do things, that's what I do. Whereas other people on the far side, it's closer to 30% where they're completely hands off. Right. But a lot of these companies, they're like, or people, a lot of people in general, they're like, man, 30% is a lot. It's like, well, I mean, if you think about like all the money that you're putting into like your soap, shampoos, uh, your trash bags, your bathroom trash bags, your scrubs, your dishwashing soap, your dishwashing pods. Like there's a million things. I do conditioner as well. There, and then I replace a lot of different things. So there's a lot, and toilet paper, paper towels, like those are the biggest ones right there. And then getting stuff fixed. There's a lot of little things that kind of go into that. Guesty, like that's 55 bucks, like advertisement, 55 bucks listed on Guesty. There's 20 bucks for the dynamic pricing tool. So all these other things that we do to like advertise your property on multiple platforms, get you the best price, is something that I, like really value, or at least I like feel like that's a good value to my guests and clients. So the ones that
Oh,
I do have currently are pretty happy about it. So
that's awesome. Awesome. Well,
yeah.
I'm glad I asked that question. So
Yeah.
good stuff. Well, thanks again, Josh. Josh Legare, for everybody out there in the Fort Walton Beach area in Florida Panhandle. Just, thanks again for having the time and your crazy busy schedule for us, and looking forward to having you on very, very soon.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Joe. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it.
Cool, man. All right, I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Talk soon.